14. Armed Forces Intelligence. With the approach of the 20th century, both the Army and the Navy took steps to formally establish intelligence institutions within their organizations. Quote, "Until after the U.S. Civil War, the Navy's intelligence efforts and requirements were essentially those within the capacity of a ship's commanding officer to conduct and use. Then technical developments stimulated not only by the Civil War in the United States, but also by the Crimean War and the Franco-Prussian War in Europe, resulted in improved metals and powder, which, in turn, led to the progressive development of larger caliber, built-up, rifled ordnance-firing elongated missiles. The German development of the sliding wedge breech block made muzzle loading obsolete and permitted fixed gun mounts and more accurate aiming. Armor progressed from wood to iron to steel. Recognizing the need for keeping in touch with such progress in foreign navies, the Secretary of the Navy, on 23 March 1882, signed General Order 292, establishing the Office of Intelligence in the Bureau of Navigation, quote, "to collect and record such naval information as may be useful to the Department in wartime as well as in peace," end quote. The Navy Department Library was combined with the Office of Intelligence. Naval attaché posts were set up in London in 1882, in Paris in 1885, and in Rome in 1888. The attaché in Paris was also accredited to Berlin and St. Petersburg, later Petrograd, then Leningrad, and the attaché at Rome included Austria in his area of accreditation. End quote. Footnote: W. H. Packard, A Briefing on Naval Intelligence, All Hands, number 591, April 1966. End footnote. As constituted, the Office of Naval Intelligence collected and disseminated largely technical information about naval affairs. Undoubtedly, some amount of political information was garnered through the attaché system managed by the office. It would appear, however, that until World War I, the unit, which was attached to the newly created Office of the Chief of Naval Operations in 1915, concerned itself largely with technical matters. Some of these topics of concern to the office are reflected in the titles of its General Information series of publications. Footnote: these include the following: U.S. Navy Department, Bureau of Navigation, Office of Naval Intelligence, Observations upon the Korean Coast, Japanese Korean ports, and Siberia, made during a journey from the Asiatic Station to the United States through Siberia and Europe, by Lieutenant B. H. Buckingham, Ensigns George C. Fulk and Walter McLean, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1883, 163 pages. Report on the exhibits at the Crystal Palace Electrical Exhibition, 1882, by Ensign Frank J. Sprague, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1883, 169 pages. Examples, conclusions, and maxims of modern naval tactics by Commander William Bainbridge Hough, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1884, 149 pages. Papers on naval operations during the year ending July 1885, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1885, 135 pages. Papers on squadrons of evolutions, the recent development of naval material, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1886, 265 pages. Recent naval progress, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1887, 346 pages. Naval Reserves, Training, and Material, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1888, 433 pages. Naval Mobilization and Improvement in Material, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1889, 485 pages. A Year's Naval Progress, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1890, 423 pages. Office of Naval Intelligence, The Year's Naval Progress, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1891, 491 pages. Notes on the Year's Naval Progress, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1892, 366 pages. The International Columbian Naval Rendezvous and Review of 1893 and Naval Maneuvers of 1892, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1893, 238 pages. Notes on the Year's Naval Progress, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1894, 458 pages. The series was continued until at least 1902 under the title Notes on the Year's Naval Progress, one volume for each year, 1895 through 1902. Another series of 4 reports were produced during this same period, 1888 through 1900, under the title Coaling, Docking, and Repairing Facilities of the Ports of the World. Another frequent issuance was a pamphlet, updated at various times, entitled Information Concerning Some of the Principal Navies of the World, which was apparently created for public distribution. One special report was produced as a consequence of the Spanish-American War, which was in the format of the General Information Series, but captioned War Notes and entitled U.S. Navy Department Office of Naval Intelligence, Notes on the Spanish-American War, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1899. Other specialized studies may have been produced for publication during the period in addition to these documents indicated here, which are based upon holdings of the Library of Congress. End footnote. From its inception until June 1899, the office had no authorization for clerical employees and relied upon detailees from other bureaus for staff. The advent of the Spanish-American War not only prompted an authorization for clerks, but also triggered an expansion of the attaché system. Officers were assigned to Tokyo, 1895, Madrid, 1897, Caracas, 1903, Buenos Aires, 1910, and The Hague, 1911. Commenting on the evolution of the Navy's intelligence unit vis-a-vis the emergence of the Army's counterpart structure, one authority, himself a former director of the Office of Naval Intelligence, has said, quote, "It is well to recognize that the Military Information Division has much more complex duties, not only in keeping track of enemy activities within our own borders and foiling them, but in expanding and coordinating all the military resources of the country. The Navy is always ready for war or on a tentative war footing with some trained reserves to draw upon. It is a comparatively simple matter to pass from a peace to a war footing. Intensive target practice, torpedo exercises, mine-laying exercises, and maneuvers keep the personnel deeply interested through the competitive spirit. It is the duty of the Navy to hold the enemy in check while the Army mobilizes and deploys. Curiously enough, naval strategy may be planned in time of peace by building stations, acquiring bases, and studying all the elements of the possible enemy's strategy. But an Army cannot acquire supply bases or fortified stations in the same way in time of peace. A Navy is not efficient unless it is always on a tentative war footing, for when war comes, you cannot improvise a Navy. We have never done anything else than improvise an Army." End quote. Footnote: U.S. Navy Department, Division of Operations, The History and Aims of the Office of Naval Intelligence by Rear Admiral A.P. Niblack, Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1920, page 11. Copies of this study bear the marking "Not for Publication," indicating limited distribution. The copy utilized in this study was supplied by the National Archives and Records Service. End footnote. The War Department inaugurated its permanent intelligence institution 3 years after the Navy established the Office of Naval Intelligence. In 1885, the Secretary of War had asked the Adjutant General for information on the armed forces of a certain power, it may have been Russia, against whom Germany's Bismarck was busy aligning allies to effect a balance of power. To the Secretary's surprise, he learned that no such information was readily available in Washington. Furthermore, no government agency existed for collecting and compiling such information. From this frustration was born what would become the Military Information Division of the Adjutant General's Office. The grandiose name did not originally apply to the one officer and clerk detailed to, quote, gather and file information concerning the military organizations of foreign countries in which, for one reason or another, the United States might become interested, end quote. 4 years later, the military attaché system was authorized by Congress. It has functioned ever since, although sometimes with hardly more than a flicker, overtly to gather and forward to the War Department military information on the countries to which attachés were assigned. It became a function of the Military Information Division to select attachés, to pass them their instructions from the War Department, and to receive their reports for the Army." End quote. The Military Information Division remained small and went unnoticed by the Army's officer corps, its attaché system almost non-existent on the eve of the Spanish-American War. Nevertheless, however minute, the United States had a permanent intelligence structure when once again faced with the prospect of hostilities in 1898. This is Our Hidden History